Hello everybody and welcome to the first of and hopefully many tutorials on how to make stuff for VRChat. This is going to cover how to make effects without the help of VRC Fury or Modular and teach you how to make and add things from scratch. Hopefully this will also help you create more effects later to add to your own model. Today we'll be covering this effect. It's a flying particle that you can move and guide using your hand position. But before we start, we'll need a few things. Unity for one. Check with the VRChat guide to see which version they support at the moment. You'll also need Avatar Emulator 3.0. This will let you test the effect once it's on the model. You can find it on their GitHub. In this tutorial, it requires you to already have a model ready to import in VRChat. I'll assume that you have one, but it's only because this will explain how to add it and make toggles for your model. Alright, let's get started. The effect works in three parts. One will track the position of your hand, the other one will be the flying particle, and the last part will be the particles when it explodes. So we'll start by setting up the empty game objects that will contain some stuff. First off, pick which hand you want to attach things to. We'll pick the right hand for this tutorial. You go all the way down to the right wrist. You can create an empty game object within it, and then you can pull it out of there and put it at the base of your model. Let's rename it to particle container R, just so we know it's in the right hand. The reason we created within the wrist is that it's created at the 0 point, so it'll basically pivot at the point that your wrist pivots. It won't be displaced. Next thing you want to do is add a parent constraint. So you can find it in VRC parent constraint. You want to add this to your newly created empty game object. You want to add a source transform, which is the little plus sign, and then you want to drag your right wrist within it and click activate. This will make it so the particle container R will follow the position and the rotation of your right wrist. So everything within it will now follow that position and rotation. This container is the important one. This is where we're going to put the flying particles and whatever particles we want to shoot out the moment we trigger the animation. Every other particles that is going to be caused by like the explosion once the effect is done, they're going to be put within a different container that we can put just at the base of the model. So we can create an empty and call them non-awake particle. And we'll put them in there. All right, now we can start by creating some particles. We're going to start by making a trigger particle. That is basically what will launch your missile out that you can guide. It's not the missile itself, it's just what launches it. So just right-click the particle container and go into effects and create particle system. We can rename it to trigger, and we can tell it to stop shooting a lot of particles right now because this is not what we want. We're going to set the duration to 0.15, not looping, and a lifetime of 0.15 as well, with a start speed of 0.001. This is because the minimum amount of time that you can have a particle on to trigger anything is about 0.15. I think the actual one is 0.12, but just to be on the safe side, we put it at 0.15. And the start speed being at 0.001 is just so it has a bit of speed for the sub-particles that will be emitting from it to inherit that to basically go in the right direction. This will only need to have one maximum particle. You can put it at 2 if you want, but you definitely don't need 1,000. For the rest, simulation space would be local. Scaling mode, you can put it to hierarchy, but it doesn't matter because basically this trigger will not be rendered. You don't need a shape. You don't need a renderer. And you can change the emission here to, instead of rate over time, have it add a burst of 1. So it'll just spawn 1 once it's called upon. We do want it to be always simulated. and not called out, just to be sure that people that, even if they're in front of you, you can trigger things and make them fly around them and they will see it coming out. Now, for this trigger, we can add more things. So when we fire the particle that flies out, it'll also, let's say, do a little burst of particle. So you can create a new effect, another particle system that we can put within the non-awake particles. We will open this up, tell it to stop playing for now, and change a few things in here. We don't want it looping. Duration, let's say it's a quick one. It'll last for 1 second. And each particle, to give it a little bit of variety, we can change between two constant the duration. Let's say from between 1 to 0.5. And the start speed will be also random between two constant, between let's say 1 and 3, just to give it a bit of variety. The simulation space though will be world. So what's the difference between world and local? Local particles will follow basically your movement and where your position is. And the world particle will not be affected by how you move. Once you throw it out there, that's how it is, and that's pretty much it. They require to not be within your armature, so that's why they are within this non-awake particle container, empty object container. So we will rename this one burst on launch or burst launch. We want the scaling mode to be hierarchy, so that if you scale your model up and down, the particles will also scale up and down. And we want the max amount of particle, let's say 30. And then always simulate as well. The shape, we will probably want some kind of cone. We'll just have a smaller radius. There you go, like that. And the emission, instead of rate over time, we want a burst, and we said about 30 maximum. So just to be sure that we can cast it at least like twice without making particles disappear, we'll give it a burst of 15. So obviously this looks a little weird right now because the particles are pretty big. So we can change the start size to something smaller. There you go. And if you think those are lasting too long, we can drop the lifetime or the speed. We can drop the speed. Let's say instead of 3, let's put 0.5. There you go. And like from 0 to 0.5. So some of them will be maybe not standing at the origin. Let's put a little bit of something like 0.1. There you go. Now, for the renderer, this is something you want to do for billboard particles, because you can see that when you zoom in, like the particle can get really big. And if you zoom, like you go out, normally sometimes in VRChat, they'll scale it up as well. So you want the minimum particle size and the maximum particle size to be very huge in their respective sections. So for minimum, you want it to be super small. And for maximum, you want it to be super huge. This will make it so that basically they won't scale if you move far away. Like they can be super tiny particles. All right. Now with that, that's your effect. It pops out. Let's say we want some color over time. You go to this section, color over lifetime. And it's a gradient. You can select some pre-made stuff. And it'll just, there you go. Change from the start transparency, a little bit of orange to darker red, and then transparency fade out. That's perfect. And the very important things for the non-awake particle sections is you do not want the play on awake to be checked. You want to uncheck this so that the particle will never be just playing by itself. It'll only play when the parent particles tells it to. So this would be the triggered thing here. Okay, so now we have our little burst particle done. We're going to angle it forward like this, so it fires this way. And this is because of the trigger. Sometimes the trigger will fire in a random direction and you might need to change the original's position a bit. So for now we got the trigger. we rotate it to 90 degrees so it's facing this way. So the, I think this is the Z-axis, the blue one. Yeah, blue one is the Z-axis, and you can have it pointed towards where your hand is pointing. And then you're gonna want to add a sub-emitter and put the burst within it here. And tell it to reparent, that's fine. We're gonna then pull it out of the trigger and back into the non-awake particle. Now for the trigger, we want it on death. So every time this particle dies, it'll launch the set of little bursts that we got. You can change the placement of it as well if you want it to be more towards the end of your hand. That's completely fine. You just need to change the burst, not the burst, sorry, the trigger to be here. So let's say we want to make another one that's a set of black particles. So we can duplicate this and call them black. And then instead we just change the color over lifetime, put something like this, and the alpha down. As you can see, they are down there. And then the same thing, go to trigger, go to sub-emitters, add a new one, put this one in, tell it to reparent, pull it out. And then for this, you want to have it at death as well. And now when I fire, I got both of them. Instead of putting it black, let's put them yellow. Just change the color here, bright yellow. Get rid of these. Can put this one to yellow as well. There you go. But it just fades from a little bit. There you go. Fade the start towards yellow, fade the end. And then when I click on trigger, you can see that's the effect. All right, cool. Now you got your little start of the animation. Now we're going to create the trailing particle, the one you can control with your hand. Okay, so now what you want to do for the flying particle, you want to go into your particle non-awake and you want to create a new system there. So you're going to go and create a effect, particle system. Again, it's going to start throwing things. We don't need a shape, and we can definitely not have it play right now. But for the duration, what we're going to set out is going to be a small duration for the system itself, but a very long lifetime for the particle, and it's not going to be looping. So the particle system could be 1 second, it's completely fine. Start lifetime, I think I have mine at 10,000. These are seconds, so it's definitely going to be flying for a long time, and we're going to manually kill it by making a collider for it. The way this particle system is going to work, it's going to be velocity over lifetime instead of speed, meaning it's going to be moving over its lifetime in a certain direction, and that direction is going to be locally changed. That's how it's going to be moving by tilting your wrist. So let's set up the first part first. We're going to simulate space world because it's going to be a particle flying out in the world. It's not going to be on your model itself. Start size, that depends on what you want to put as a flying particle. For myself, I'm going to use this cone mesh that I have. So I'm just going to put it to mesh. I'm going to put this cone right in there. And then when I throw it, right now it might be a bit big, or it's just the default the default material doesn't show up in here. That's completely fine. We can make a new material for it. I'm going to use something I already have. Just going to grab a quick material. Here you go, and put that there. So to change, because currently it's a little hard to see because it looks like a sphere, but it's supposed to be a cone. That's because the render alignment is set to view. What we want it to be is set to velocity. So the way it travels is the way it's going to be pointing. These are a little fast for now, so we're going to change. The start speed is going to be 0. but the velocity over lifetime, depending on the axis, right now you can see the blue line is straight ahead, so it's going to be the z-axis. We can set it to, let's say, 10. That's a little fast. Let's put it to 2. It's still a little fast. Go to 1. There you go. But we don't want an emission of 10. We want only 1. And so we'll set up a burst of 1. That means that when we turn on the system or when it's called upon, it's going to fire just 1. And that one will be alive for a very long time. So the maximum amount of particles for this system can be set to 1. The scaling mode can be hierarchy. That's completely optional. Other than that, we want the play on awake to be off because this is going to be called upon some other system, the trigger particle we have earlier. And the last thing we want, let's make this a little bit bigger, here we go, is to be facing the opposite way. We want the little trail to be this way. So what you start doing is start rotation and turn this to 180 degrees. If it doesn't change, that means it's not the right default rotation axis. So you can change the 3D rotation axis and then you can see which one you want. So this one we're going to have 180, and there we go. Now it's flying correctly. And if you want to see if it's following the movement, it's very easy. You have to set this to local in your velocity over lifetime. Make sure the z-axis is the one you're using. And it's going to be requiring a little bit of finagling, but you want to grab your rotation tool. Make sure you're on your particle system, and when you press play, you can move it, and you can see that it's following my movement now. You can turn it sideways, it'll be trailing. Perfect. Let's put it a tiny bit faster, let's say 1.5. And that's it for this flying particle. Now you want to make sure that this is called upon by your trigger. So we're just going to rename it flying particle. And within the trigger, you're going to go into sub-emitters. And this is going to be on birth. On death, like the other ones. As soon as that particle dies, sends out the flying particle. You put it in here. It's going to ask you to reparent it. You say yes, and then you bring it right back out there. Now, there's a specific thing that's going on with this particle system. You're going to see when you're firing it, it doesn't fire in the same angle as what you set up your trigger to be. This might be caused because of the velocity over lifetime set to local, but we can't change that. So what we're going to do is, instead of having it in the non-awake particle, we're going to have it in the particle container R, and you're going to align it the same way you will align your trigger particle. So you can copy this property, this component here, and just put it on there, paste component value, which should be now the same, and you can see it fires in the same direction. And same thing if you're moving your wrist, it's going to move this thing. Now, I slowed it down just to show you, but you can put it back to the proper speed that you wanted. There you go. Let's put it a little faster than that. There we go. So, for this flying particle, that's pretty much it. The play on awake is turned off. It's only being called by the trigger. We want to make sure that we can only call one at a time. There you go. And it flies. The next step would be, we can add a little bit of detail, like a trail following this flying particle. So let's add a trail on this one. As you can see, it's going to be pretty freaking huge, which is not something we want right now. So we're going to change it a tiny bit. Oh yeah, this is way too big. So for the flying particle, we're going to trail. We leave it at particle. The difference is ribbon will connect multiple particles together. Particle will just make a trailing behind a single particle. Or multiple particles, but they won't connect to each other. Ratio is how many of those particles you want to have a ribbon on, 1 being 100% of them. Since we only have 1 particle, that's completely fine. Lifetime, we can reduce that. Since it's the particle is incredibly long lasting, we can leave the lifetime to 0.1, and even that's going to be way too big. Yeah. We probably want something along the lines of 0.001. Yeah, there you go. As you can see, it starts to fade away. Not even close, actually. I'm gonna have to be even smaller than that. There we go. This is a lot better. Cool. Next thing we want to do is probably put a material on it, because a big white line is not great. We can use default particles for that. Since we have default particles for this, we can just copy it over from this one. I don't know if it's gonna let me just, yeah, click and drag. It's not. So we're gonna go here and go type in particle, default particle. There we go. It kind of makes it like a dot. That's not exactly what we want. So we're gonna change in the trail here. If we put it to tile, does it? No. We'll put it to stretch. But instead of having it this big, we're gonna change the width over trail. So we're just gonna pause it while it's flying so we can have a better view. And we can have it a curve, so you can kind of make the start smaller. Make the end smaller as well, and kind of have it, you know, like a curve, like it's following the curve I have here. And then you can, with this number here, make it even smaller than that. There you go. And let's say I wanted color over lifetime or color over trail is what I would want. Let's say I wanted red. You can change it to a gradient if you want. Make it start a little bit more softer. Still red, but transparent red. And then end in a black smoky version and just, oops, I'll go remove that. Then drop the alpha here. There you go. There you go. This is a very simple trail effect. You can put a lot of things to create different effect. The original one that I had a specific shader that had a lightning moving in it. Just place it in your renderer section for trails here. Trail material. If you have trails active, then it'll show up there. The options to mess around with it. What you want to make sure though is that the trail will die with the particle, so that if we kill the particle, then it'll just kill everything. There you go. So this is pretty much how you set up the flying particle. Next thing we're going to do is set up the explosion at the end of this particle. Now what we want to set up is a way to kill our flying particle. That when we stop doing a certain gesture, particle stops existing and blows up into another effect. The way we can do this at pretty much any distance is that we're going to set up a trigger in it. And triggers are basically a box or shape that you create, and what it is inside of it, outside of it, it enters or it exits will have different properties. So to set up a trigger, super easy. You grab the flying particle, you click trigger. The list will be empty. We click the plus sign, and when we'll make our trigger, we can put it there. But what we want is to kill this particle when it is inside this trigger. And the radius scale is going to be massive. So we want something that even if the particle is super far away, when we turn on the little collider trigger box, it'll be making contact with this particle and then kill it. So if we do this, as you can see, this is a sphere that you cannot even see the sides of it. It is humongous. This is fine. This is just on the particle itself. It's not like a collider on your model, so don't worry about like flying everywhere. This is completely fine. The other thing you want to create is within, let's say, your hips, you can create, you can create an empty, and we'll call this the trigger box. Let's say trigger sphere, because I think it's a sphere. And you want to add a box collider or sphere collider, like this. But you want to make sure that this checkbox here is checked. Otherwise, you will be flying around because this is colliding with your own model, and it's like a box. It'll try to push you around, and it'll just break your entire model. We don't need the sphere to be super big. We can keep it small. And we want it currently off, so that when we stop doing our gesture, that summons the little flying particle, this will be turned on, killing the particle instead. So by default, it'll be off. When we do our thing, that's when we're going to animate the whole process. Now we go into flying particle. We go all the way down to the triggers, and we're going to add this thing here. Now, if you want to test it out, send out your particle. It'll be flying, and then just turn on the sphere, and it should kill it. When you go back to flying particle, boop, it just stops existing. And if you try to relaunch another one, it automatically touches it, so it'll be instantly dead. Now, we want to create an effect for when it dies. So it's a little bit of like we're launching the particle, the little spheres that come out of there. It's the same principle, but on the flying particles. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy one of these effects. I'm going to copy that one. We're going to name it Burst Death. We're going to change the shape of it to a sphere so that when it blows up in a little radius. We're going to make, let's say 30. We're going to give it double here max particles because there might be 2 quick explosions and we don't want them to start not appearing. And then with these, we're going to give a small trail, and we're going to do the same thing as we did for the flying particle trail. So what you can do is you can come here, you can right click trails and copy module, and then you go to burst death and then paste module, and there you go. Now you have to make sure that you have a trail material for it though. So you have to go in your renderer here, and where it says trail material, we're going to give it the same one. If I remember, it was particle. I have a lot of particles. If I tried default, there you go. Default particle, that's the one. It's a little hard to see it, actually, very hard to see it. Let me see. The lifetime is too small. So let's say we do 1. And then this will have to be a little bit bigger than that. So we can do 2. And then we will turn off the die with particle just to see how long it lasts. There you go. Obviously, this is just default, very default effect. Like, there's nothing fancy about it. This is just to test out something and to show you how it works. You can change, you can get some prefabs made, or just grab some prefabs from other projects and just use them in this way, and it'll work still. So the burst death particle, the one that's used here, make sure the play on awake is off. And what you want to do is in the flying particle, you want to add a sub emitter. So I'm just going to close some sections here. You want to add a sub emitter. You want to put the burst death in there. Again, parent, pull it out. And instead, you want it to be on death. So when this flying particle dies, it'll summon this effect. Let's make it a little bit bigger than that. Start size, we'll put it to 0.5 to 0.25. And we'll give it more speed, let's say 1 to 3. There you go. Boom. Cool. If you want to test it out, you want to turn off your trigger sphere. First of all, otherwise your flying particle won't be able to fly. Here you go. Flying particle flies out. We're going to turn on the trigger sphere. Go back to our flying particle. Oh. Well, you can see it at the start here. As soon as you make it play, it explodes and dies. And you can see it blows up. So this is pretty much all we need to make the effect possible. Now we're going to set it up with the avatar parameters, the effects layer, how you toggle it. We're going to go through this process. Okay, the last step will be to make animations and parameters to toggle this particle to launch and turn off and explode. So right click in your files and create a new animation. We're gonna make 3 animations. So one will be particle off, one will be particle on, and then the last one will be particle explode. With all 3 of those, make a copy of your avatar. You can turn off the original just for now. Put all 3 onto it. And the way we're going to do it is you're going to have the animation tab open. You can lock it so it doesn't move. And then you're going to start to record. And what you want to record is this. For particle off, you want to go to your particle container R and make sure the trigger is off. So just start recording, and we're going to make a little keyframe here that it's off. That's pretty much it. For particle on, same thing. We want this to trigger on. And for particle explode, it's going to be a little different. We want to find the collider that we made, this one, and this is what we're going to turn on. Now, in the other ones, you want to make sure that this is off. So what we can do is go back to our particle on, make sure the trigger sphere is off, and in particle off, we'll also turn it off. If you have any audio that you want to play when you're triggering things, this is where you can add it. Unfortunately, you can't put audio on the particle itself when it's moving around, so it'll be on your model. That's just a limitation of audios. So once you have all 3 animations done, you can, turn off your copy. We won't be needing it anymore. You can even delete it if you want. Once you have your avatar descriptor all filled up and ready to go, we're going to need 2 things at the bottom here in expressions. We're going to need a menu and parameters. So you want to right click again in your files, and you're going to create VRChat and make parameters and menu, 1 of each. You're going to go here, parameters and menu, and you want to go to your bottom of your descriptor and put them in there. All right. In your menu, the way I'm doing mine, I have kind of a safety toggle. So even if I'm doing gestures, it won't fire anything unless the toggle in the menu is turned on. So this is how I'm going to build it here. So we'll call it missile toggle. And it's going to be a toggle. So that means there's an on and off position. In your parameters, you want to add a boolean. Booleans are either true or false. So this is going to be called missile. And you don't want it saved, but you want it synced. So this will mean that when you turn it on, other people in VRChat will all see it turn on. If you didn't have it synced, then it wouldn't do it unless they're wearing your avatar. They would do it for themselves. And then nobody could see your missiles, it wouldn't work. So this is very important, you want this synced. Saved is just if you go from one world to the other, will it reset to nothing or will it reset to whatever you chose? I don't want it saved, it's always off by default, so this will be the correct thing unchecked. The last thing we need is an animator controller. So same thing, right click, create animator controller. We're going to call this the effects layer because when you click here in the descriptor and you go at the bottom, FX, you want to add it right here. And in your effects layer, this is how we're going to tell it to move from one animation state to the other. So very important, you go to when you click effects layer, it'll pop up a little window animator. And if you don't have that, just go to Windows at the top and you can choose animation, animator, not animation, but animator. And then you go in parameters and you want to add whatever the parameter you created in your parameter list. So boolean, and you have to name it the exact same thing. So now they can talk to each other. You go back to layers, create yourself a new layer. We'll call it the missile toggle layer. Missile toggle, well, just missile layer. There you go. And you want to click this little gear and make sure that its weight is at 1. That means that every animation that's in here are going to be applied. And you want to put in missile off, missile on, and particle explosion. There you go. So by default, you want it to be off. If you didn't put off first, just right click it, set as layer default state. That's going to put it there. You want to select all three and make sure that right defaults here is turned off. This is going to be a little hard to understand for now, but VRChat works in two ways when you make animation. Right default means that every time you go to an animation state, it will not change what the previous settings were unless you tell it to. Meaning if you turn on, let's say, sound of an explosion and then go back to off, it'll let it play out until it's completed and everything, and it'll never turn back off unless you tell it in particle off to be turned off. This is useful when you have long sounds that have like echoing reverb into it. I like to work that way. Is you just have to kind of keep track of what you left on because there's a limit of how many audio files you can have on an avatar. 3 is the limit. So at some point you want to turn things off. And as well, whenever you do the explosion, if you want it to toggle, like to play again, you have to toggle it on again. We're not going to cover sound today, but there's many ways to do it. You can do it within the animation. You can do it within a behavior attachment. So for now, when we have particle off and you want to do particle on and fire it, we're going to make a transition. Click like this, right click, and just make a transition to this one. And we're going to open up the settings, and you're going to hear this term a few times from me. You're going to zero it out, meaning you're going to put exit time to 0. You're going to uncheck this, put it to 0, and uncheck the exit time. This means exit time means normally it will move from here to here after a set duration of time, like a percentage. If it's at 1, that means it plays the entire animation, then moves on to this. That's not what you want. You want it to, when you have a toggle activated, then it moves to this. Well, toggle and gesture. So you don't want an exit time. You want to be the one telling it when you want to change. And with this, you're going to have conditions here. We're going to have two things. First, you click the little plus, it's going to try to fill in whatever you have possible. Missile true is going to be the first one. But we also want gestures. And right now we have no gestures here. So we're going to have to add those. Now, when you want to add those are normally by default if you ever grab like a template of an FX layer. But if you don't have it, just make a integer and name it gesture right and gesture left. Exactly written like this. Capital G, capital R. And if we make another one, we'll just name it left. Those are your gestures that you can do with your controller. 0 being your idle. If I remember correctly, 1 is fist, 2 is finger point, 3 would be open hand, 4 is peace sign, 5 is rock and roll, 7 is thumbs up, and 8 is finger gun. I could be wrong, but I think that's about it. So yeah, once you're here, you want to add a different condition. Since the missile was set to be on the right hand, we're going to put gesture right, and let's say we want it to be finger point. That would be 3, if I remember what I said. We're going to change it to equal 3. Now, what that means is that when our toggle is on in the menu, and when the gesture is the right gesture, it'll move on to fire the particle. Now, that's going to be working as long as we're holding that gesture, because it's going to switch to explode when we tell it that we're not doing the gesture anymore. So same thing, no exit time, no fixed duration, 0 that out. And we're going to change it to when the gesture right is not equal to 3. But also we're going to make a second transition. And you click on it, you're going to have both of them here. Same, 0 it out. But we're going to add one that if the missile is also turned off in the menu, it will go to explode. And then the last one would be back to particle off, and that will be by itself. So since this is the explosion, we want to make sure that it goes back here by itself, meaning this time we want an exit time. We're going to make the particle explode play out entirely, and then 0 out the transition duration, because you don't want it to blend together. You want it to be, once it's completely done, it moves on to particle off. If you have any sounds, well, you can make this particle explode longer in duration than just one keyframe, and then it'll play out entirely and then move on to particle off. So with this should technically work. We have one more thing that we didn't do. It's within the menu. Since we didn't have it created, the parameter needs to be added here. I'm just going to type this properly because it's not Missy, it's Missile. There you go. The parameter now that we want to toggle in the menu is Missile. So now it's going to be from false to true as soon as we click the thing. So when you want to test it out, go into play mode. It'll take a little bit of a time. There you go. You want to add the Avatar 3.0 emulator. Just enable it. If you haven't already, it will add this thing right here. Now you click your model and you can see missile toggle. I'll put it in T-pose so we can see it better. But once I click this, let's test out something before. I'm going to make the gesture right here go to finger point, which should be 3, like we said for this. Doesn't do anything, but as soon as I put the missile toggle on, it fires it. Cool. Let me not do finger point. Boom. It blew up. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we can do this. Boom. Do it again. Boom. It just works. Perfect. Now we want to test out when we turn off the missile. So we keep finger point, turn this off, it explodes. Perfect. This is pretty much how you do the effect. If you want to add more to it, you can. This is very much just a base of how the system works. You can add audio to it, you can add more particles. This is just to get you started. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can work with it and do your own thing. And I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.